My unfaithful wife and my best friend slept together. I waited until his wedding to expose them, and then stole his fiancée. If this story resonates with you, subscribe to the channel and share in the comments which city you're watching from. We'd love to know where our community is growing. I recently found out that my wife and one of my best friends, who by the way is engaged, have been sleeping together. I'm not sure how long this has been going on, or if it's happened more than once. All I know is that it happened, and I'm heartbroken. I've only been married to her for 3 years. My friend is engaged right now, and his wedding is in a few months. I've heard many stories of men who discover their partners are unfaithful, and it's very easy to see them just as stories. But now, knowing the type of emotional pain they go through, I don't think I can ever see those accounts the same way again. Feeling it firsthand is something I wouldn't wish on anyone except the worst kind of people. Honestly, I've known my wife since our college days. She was in a relationship back then, and so was I, but we were very good friends. We got along quickly because we liked the same things, and she ended up being my best friend at that time. Her relationship ended in about a year later. Mine did too. A few years passed with both of us being single before I decided to express my feelings to her. Luckily for me, she felt the same, so we started dating. As for my friend, I met him after college at a party in the city. We talked a lot and hung out a couple of times after that party. We became close friends very quickly, and he just joined my general group of friends. I think I was already dating my now wife at that point, so he met her very early on. They're two people who've been by my side for a long time, and I think it's reasonable to have expected them to be loyal to me. I expected them to stick by my side, but clearly that wasn't what they were interested in doing. I found out in a very strange way. My wife came home a little later than usual one night. That wasn't out of the ordinary, especially since she let me know she'd be late, so I didn't dwell on it. However, I felt like she was acting strangely when she got back. When I tried to hug her, she pulled away from me pretty quickly. I didn't have to wonder why, because I smelled it on her. I won't say I'm an extreme perfume fanatic, but I like fragrances and I pay attention to scents I'd like to buy in the future. I know exactly what her perfumes smell like because I smell them almost daily. However, during that hug, the fragrance I smelled wasn't hers. I knew exactly whose it was because it belonged to my friend. He's one of my best friends, and he's not a cologne fanatic like most. He's been buying the same fragrance over and over again for the past few years. So the moment I smelled it, I knew it smelled like him. That also explained why she didn't want to be near me for long. Still, I acted like I hadn't noticed anything. Later, when we were talking and she was telling me about her day, I noticed she didn't mention a single word about him. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt and think she'd simply forgotten, but she and my friend only talked because of me. I was the common connection. Therefore, I found it hard to imagine that running into him, even if it was by pure coincidence, was the kind of thing she'd forget to tell me. I've been cheated on before, so I instantly became suspicious. I'd never had reason to distrust her, but that was the first moment I did. I knew something was going on between the two of them, and she was choosing to hide it. The only thing that made sense was that she was cheating on me with him. I even thought that maybe he needed a woman's advice for something he had planned for his fiancée, but there was no reason for my wife not to tell me. Because of that, I realized I'd have to find out what they were talking about in their phone conversations. That would be what would allow me to know if something was really happening between them. She'd never answer me if I asked her directly, so there was no point in trying. It was difficult to find an opportunity to check her phone without her being present, but when I had it, I didn't let it pass. It was about 3 days later. She left her phone charging, so I could take it and check it. I went to her conversations with my friend and realized that many of the messages had been deleted because he in the chat was somewhat disjointed. Some parts didn't flow in the way I'd normally expect. I could confirm that she deleted messages because she forgot to delete one of her replies where she quoted a message from him. Her reply was just a laughing emoji. It made sense that she'd overlooked it when deleting the others. I couldn't see the full message he'd sent, but I could see that it ended with, "And the funny thing is when you kiss me there," preceded by a bunch of laughing emojis from him. I was going to keep reading more messages to see if I found anything further up that would help me confirm it completely, but she started to move in bed and I retreated. At that moment, I wasn't ready for a confrontation. No, right then I needed more evidence. I ended up trying a second round. The next day, I managed to take a screenshot of the quoted message. I sent it to my phone immediately and then looked much further up in the conversation. It was very hard to scroll up, but I finally found a point she seemed to have overlooked in her frenzy of deleting messages. It was from about 6 weeks ago, and it was the two of them flirting quite intensely. There was nothing to indicate they'd already slept together at that point, but it was clear they were crossing the line. That alone was enough to end things with her. We're talking about a woman I loved so intensely I asked her to marry me. We're talking about her cheating on me with a good friend of mine. At the same time, he betrayed me with her when he should have been loyal to me. He has a fiancée, which is all the more reason to be faithful. Both are horrible people, and I can't wait to get them out of my life. There's no room for either of them anymore. Divorce is my next step. I haven't even started that process, but I'll make sure to do it soon. I'll start a new life without traitors holding me back. I don't know how long this has been going on behind my back, but I know at least 6 weeks and probably much longer. I've documented everything, so she has no escape when the time finally comes to end our relationship. I'll do my best to come back and write an update once I've confronted her and the divorce is underway. I don't know how long it'll take, but I hope it's soon. Update 1. In my previous post, I talked about my wife and my engaged friend, who I found out were sleeping together. It was a pretty strange experience for me because I realized it by smelling my friend's cologne on my wife. I instantly knew it wasn't the scent she wore, and my mind didn't take long to identify who it belonged to. I know some will say it could have been someone else she was in contact with, but either way it meant someone, obviously a man, was close enough to her to leave his scent impregnated. It doesn't matter anyway, because I saw the messages between her and the person I suspected, my good friend. There isn't much more I'm going to say in this update, except that I've already decided exactly what I plan to do. I'm going to be patient. I could choose to confront them both right now, but that's boring. I'd end up screaming myself hoarse in an attempt to make two people I no longer understand how much I hate them. And at the end of the day, if they've no conscience, nothing will change for them. Instead, I'm going to hit them in a way I know will hurt. I'll end up being the villain at the end of all this. But if two people have no problem being the villains, then I'll have no problem when they make me one. I'm going to make a scene at my friend's wedding. I'll expose him as a cheater right there, and I'm going to expose my wife too. The two of them will have to deal with being the reason why that beautiful day won't have a happy ending. Some will blame me because it'll be obvious I kept that information secret until that day, but I don't care. I'm sure in a few years my friend's fiancé will thank me for saving her. That's enough for me. Update 2. There was a lot to say in this post, so I'll get straight to the point. My friend's wedding has passed, and I delivered exactly what I said I'd do. I was extremely nervous, but to be honest, once I started, everything flowed naturally. I let the situation unfold on its own. It was a very difficult day for me. I was supposed to be happy for him. I was by his side all day, cheering him on as a best man should. It was very hard to fake joy. I hated him, but I found the energy to keep up the act because I knew I'd wipe that smile off his face in a few hours. When the time came, I watched as he and his fiancée stood together at the altar. It was an outdoor wedding, and it really was a beautiful day. I almost felt like canceling my plan, but I wasn't going to let them get away with it. This was truly my only chance to cause them pain comparable to what I'd had to face. My wife was in the crowd, near the front. She also thought everything would go perfectly because I refused to let her keep smiling. When the priest uttered the phrase, "Speak now, or forever hold your peace," my heart pounded hard in my chest. I hate being the center of attention, and if I'd had another option, I wouldn't be there at that moment. But there was no other way to get the job done, so I raised my hand. There were many murmurs. I'm sure some thought it was a silly joke, but I looked at both my wife and my friend, and I'm sure the idea that I knew something crossed their minds. I stepped forward. As I did, another groomsman tried to grab my arm and ask what I was doing, but I pulled away. I looked at everyone present and told them I couldn't allow the wedding to continue. He'd been my great friend, and yes, I said it in the past tense, but he betrayed me and his fiancée at the same time. I couldn't let the ceremony go on with a clear conscience. I pointed to my wife and told everyone she was my woman. She'd been my wife for 3 years, so he'd known her since we were friends. However, the obligation they both had to me meant nothing when they decided to cheat on me. At that point, I broke my mental block and had no problem letting it all out. I made it very clear I had proof of everything I was saying, and I hated having to be the vehicle to ruin that beautiful day. But it really wasn't my fault. It was the fault of the two people who decided to be unfaithful. The man who knew he had a wonderful woman he was going to marry in a few months, but still decided to sleep with one of his friend's wives. I told everyone I'd spoken, and if the two traitors felt there was anything they could say to defend themselves and change the final outcome, they could do it. But I'd said nothing but the truth. If they chose to claim anything I said was false, I had the evidence to prove they were both lying. After that, I stepped back to let things proceed as needed. The other groomsmen stared at me. It wasn't a look of hatred, but of confusion and sympathy at the same time. At that moment, it seemed as if the whole place had frozen for an instant. No one had any idea how they should act from there. I don't blame them. It's not the kind of situation anyone is prepared for. One of the groomsmen whispered that he wanted to see the evidence I was talking about. I showed him my phone, and he handed it back to me in silence. My wife had buried her face in her hands and was hunched over. She didn't want to be seen, and I don't blame her. It's hard to accept that the filth you did is exposed in front of a crowd of people who know you and others who don't. My friend couldn't address the crowd because he'd taken his fiancée aside and was talking to her very energetically, as if trying to convince her of something. She looked very upset. The best man decided to try to take control of the situation. He told everyone it was probably a misunderstanding and they were going to try to clear things up. He asked those present to remain seated and wait 20 minutes. He managed to take me, my wife, the fiancé, my friend, and the entire wedding party to a separate location. The first thing my friend did was lunge at me as if he wanted to hit me, but I didn't even move. The other guys held him back. I told him he had no right to act as if I was the one in the wrong. Everything that was happening was a consequence of his actions, and he had no right to choose when those consequences would fall on him. I chose the most inconvenient time because I needed it to hurt. My wife looked at me and asked, "Why?" and with tears in her eyes. I'm not one to disrespect women, but I was so annoyed that I was surprised when a "shut the underscore up" came out of my mouth. She fell silent with an expression of complete astonishment. The best man asked me to show everyone the evidence, and I did. The first angle my friend tried to use was to claim it wasn't him she was chatting with. He said I had no proof it was him. I asked my wife to hand over her phone. She knew that saying no was enough to prove she had something to hide, especially since the only thing they were going to check were her chats with him, nothing else. She refused to hand over the phone, so I just shrugged. He said we could check his phone, but I just laughed because it was obvious he felt confident he'd cleaned up his end of the matter. I pointed out that my wife had done a bad job deleting things, and that's how I was able to confirm everything. He shot her a quick look of fury. I think I was the only one who noticed. He was furious with her, and I liked that. Even though both were guilty, he was probably going to take all his rage out on her. I asked them what they wanted to do. The fiancée was standing there with her makeup ruined by the tears she'd been silently shedding. I pointed to her and said that actually the decision was hers. I was already done with my wife and my friend. They wouldn't be in my life again. The wedding could continue if the fiancé had the strength to forgive them. She just shook her head over and over again. He tried to plead with her, but she slapped him so hard it echoed throughout the room. He just held his cheek and said nothing. "I guess that settles it," I said, shrugging. I approached the fiancée and apologized to her. "You could have told me before all this," she managed to say through tears. I apologized to her because I really could have, but I wanted to hurt the two of them as much as possible. I knew beforehand she'd be a victim, but I felt it was worth it to humiliate two traitors. After that, the best man went out to inform everyone the wedding was canceled. I didn't stay to see how people reacted, but I'm sure it wasn't well received, especially by those who spent a lot of money to be there. They could direct their frustration towards him, which was even better for me. He'll have to deal with the consequences for a long time. For my wife, it wasn't going to be so bad, so I made it worse by informing her entire family about what happened at the wedding. Needless to say, she almost lost her mind when she found out because she was already dealing with too much. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. She told me I'd ruined her life, and before she could say more, I reminded her she'd ruined it herself. Not only did she cheat on me, but she did it with my best friend on his wedding day. She was a bad person on many levels, and she thought there'd be no karma for her. I laughed in her face. It's going to take her a long time to recover from this. She moved out of the house and went to live with her parents, which is the best scenario for her. I didn't even have to kick her out. She knew she shouldn't try to stay. Obviously, what follows is the divorce, but I'm not too worried about it. It'll probably run its typical course, and we'll go our separate ways forever. I need that closure. I did what I had to do, and I don't want to hear from that woman ever again. For your wife to disrespect you to your face and then come home with you as if nothing happened. Cowardice. It takes a special kind of person to lie so naturally to someone you promise a life with. And the one who was my best friend is a joke, the kind of person who smiles at you and then betrays you as soon as he gets a selfish opportunity. He wasn't confused or tormented. He was simply an opportunist who thought I'd never find out. Her asking why, after everything, is almost laughable. Why are there consequences? Why did the lies catch up to you? Why didn't the universe ignore what you did? The level of denial is incredible. The truth is neither of them respected me enough to stop, and they didn't even respect me enough to cover their tracks well. That tells you everything you need to know about who they are. Update 3. 6 months have passed. Enough time for the chaos of that day at the altar to turn into a series of legal sentences and raw realities. Finally, the divorce has gone through. Despite both of us earning very good money and her expecting a long battle to maintain her lifestyle, my lawyer was relentless. Due to the evidence of her conduct and certain prenuptial agreements she thought would never apply, the judge issued a final ruling. I gave her a one-time sum of money, a considerable amount, but which, compared to what she intended, is but a fraction. With that, she signed the papers and left my life legally forever. There were no eternal pensions or shared asset dramas, just a check and a goodbye. However, money doesn't buy peace of mind. My ex-wife couldn't cope with the public humiliation or the weight of her own decisions. She fell into a deep depression from which she tried to escape in the worst way, taking refuge in alcohol. She went from being a successful professional to losing herself in bottles to forget that her entire family and friends saw her exposed as a traitor. The situation became so critical that her own parents had to intervene urgently and admitted her to an Alcoholics Anonymous clinic under a strict regimen. I know from common sources that she won't be out of there for a long time. She has a long road ahead to try to rebuild the remnants of her dignity. On the other hand, the one who used to be my best friend discovered that karma has many forms, and one of them was his now ex-fiancé's brother. Her brother, a man who doesn't mess around, couldn't bear to see his sister shattered on what should have been the happiest day of her life. He sought him out, found him, and gave him such a brutal beating that it left him unrecognizable. There were no complaints, no legal drama, just street justice. After that, my ex-friend disappeared. He sold what little he had left. He fled the city, and no one knows where he is. He became a ghost, a man without honor running from his own shadow. And this is where life becomes truly ironic. Throughout the annulment and legal process, my friend's ex-fiancée and I stayed in contact. At first, it was to share legal information, but soon we realized we were the only ones who truly understood each other's pain and rage. We started going out to dinner, then for walks, and what began as mutual support transformed into something real. Yes, we're now in an official relationship. And why not? We were both victims of a deception orchestrated by the people we trusted most. She's an incredible woman who deserves something much better than that traitor. And I found someone who values loyalty above all else. Seeing the look of astonishment on the faces of the few acquaintances who still talk to us when they see us together is priceless. In the end, the traitors ended up in misery and oblivion, while we, who were left empty-handed at that altar, ended up finding in each other what our partners could never give us: honesty. Revenge was sweet, but the happiness that came after is the real triumph. Life takes incredible turns, don't you think? Some will say starting a relationship with your best friend's ex is the perfect closure. Others will think it's taking irony too far. What do you think? Is it poetic justice that the two victims ended up together? Or do you think the protagonist went too far with his revenge at the altar? Leave your opinions below. I'll be reading them.